and the, yep, thank you.
We as ADB need to incorporate digital into our DNA. We also need to do more to help the region accelerate its digital transformation. Together, we can emerge from the pandemic stronger, more inclusive, and sustainable.
Hello and welcome to Digital X ADB, ADB's signature event on digital, and today's session on foundations and enabling environment for digital government. I'm Uni Jung with Digital Technology for Development Unit at ADB and your host. Before we launch into the event, we'd like to ask everyone to take a quick poll to tell us which stakeholder you represent and the relevance of today's topic to your work. This will help our speakers get a glimpse of who we're talking to and what this session means to you. So Impact Hub, if we can have the poll, please. And as the poll is, there you go. As you're filling up the poll, just wanted to remind everybody to use the Q&A function to pose questions to the speakers throughout the session, and they'll try to address them during the Q&A session, which comes later. Okay. All right. So with that housekeeping out of the way, it's my pleasure to invite the moderator of today's session, Mr. Bruno Carrasco, Director General and concurrently Chief Compliance Officer of Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department of ADB. Mr. Bruno, over to you.
Thank you very much, Uni. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to this session on foundations and enabling environment for digital government. It's a pleasure to be here to join you in this session. To kick off the subject matter, the use of digital technology prevails across governments throughout the world. And this is something that is of extreme importance to us in Asia, where we've seen a strong pickup on the digital technology and the whole of government approach to a digital technology very much throughout countries. We look carefully at how countries are moving towards more accessible, citizen-centric service delivery platforms for greater inclusion and to yield tangible benefits, including to the bottom of the pyramid. This session will discuss the importance of this integrated approach, whole of government approach to digital government. And we would like to see how ADB is able to contribute as we're looking at many of our DMCs and supporting them to build the foundational and enabling environment for digital government with more effective fit for purpose solutions, and including bringing in relevant stakeholders to help with this digital transformation of governments and societies. For today's session, we are privileged to have with us 4 speakers, and they will be sharing their respective experiences and lessons, including representatives from 3 countries, Korea, Azerbaijan, and Estonia, as well as from the OECD. Each speaker will be given 15 minutes to make their presentation, share their experiences, and then we will open it up to question and answers from the floor. Let me begin by introducing the first speaker. So we have, just kick off, Mr. Muhammad Ali Kudarveyedev, who is the head of Protocol Division, International Relations Department at the State Agency for Public Services and Social Innovations. ASAN, which indeed stands for Azerbaijan Service and Assessment Network, has the goal to make services more easily accessible to citizens using modern technologies. While he's been working at the agency since 2021, he has worked as a project coordinator in UNDP throughout 2013 and 2016. Before he joined ASAN, he has worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the government of Azerbaijan. Mr. Kudarveyedev, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from lovely Azerbaijan to everybody. I'm more than pleased to participate in this event and deliver my speech today. And I have the honor and the great pleasure to be part of this gathering and contribute to the success of the meetings, of this meeting. ADB is the very close partner of the government of Azerbaijan, and on its own, since 2013 and 2014, as a state agency for public service and social innovations under the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, we closely partnering with the Asian development in different various projects. So I, first of all, thanks Mr. Carrasco for a brief introduction about myself and about our organization. And I'm here with the very distinguished speakers from OECD, from Korea, Estonia, and of course, under the leadership of ADB. Thanks for giving us a chance. So now today, I will give a brief view about the digitalization, electronization of the services and public service delivery and whole public administration system in the sample of my organization. So as is well known, transparent, efficient, and citizen-oriented public sector is crucial for adequate functioning of any state. Public administration that entails the fundamental components of good governance plays a vital role in the establishment of a favorable environment to foster the sustainable development. By the way, just I forgot to share my presentation. Now here it is. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah. And just let me. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, and advancing and diversifying the economy, promoting social welfare, and creating a better life for the people have always been the top priorities of the government. And in this direction, several years ago, the leadership of Azerbaijan, the president, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, launched a comprehensive reforms in public administration. The core objective was to increase the efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency of public service in Azerbaijan. As an integral part of these reforms, the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations under the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan has been established. And these three, we put a tree, and it shows the direction of the subsidy. And so you see, there are 4 directions of activities of our state agency. As you see from the first of all, the name, it's the public services. And on public services on its own, it incorporates the ASAN services. What's ASAN? As Mr. Carrasco mentioned, its abbreviation stands Azerbaijani Service and Assessment Network, and it's the public service delivery whole that works under the principle of the one-stop shop. And I will tell you in my later slides about the uniqueness of ASAN, because as a government of Azerbaijan, we didn't invent the one-stop shop. One-stop shop invented many years ago, but we established our unique model. And what's the uniqueness of ASAN, I will tell you in the later slides. And the second direction of activity is the social projects. And on its own, we have the ABAD projects, which called the Simplified Support to Family Businesses. And it also has the strong linkage with the support to the limited income or low income families. Third direction of activity, as you see from the name of the agency, is innovation, social innovations. And in innovations, we have Innovation Center, Innovation, Incubation and Acceleration Center, and I'll come back to this issue in the later slides. And last but not least, digital solutions, which is the core theme of today's event, also one of the main direction of activity of the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations. So this slide symbolizes the number of the services which are rendering through ASAN service centers. As I mentioned, ASAN is the center, is a one-stop shop center where the 11 public organizations and 30 group of private organizations offer the more than 320 services to the citizens in the framework of the public-private partnership. On its own, ASAN is the good model of the public-private partnership, where the government services and private services can deliver to the citizens or foreigners in one place. In ASAN centers, we can get all type of the services from birth to death. Like you can get the birth certificate, you can get the ID card, like a passport, you can buy the ticket to Manila, it's possible, or to Estonia or to Korea, and or you can marry here in ASAN centers, and these centers are throughout the years are the most applied service center here in Azerbaijan. And this is the small vision of the one-stop shop here under the ASAN. By the way, the meaning of ASAN in Azerbaijan, it means easy. The main establishment of the ASAN service center is to put the efficiency to the public services, to make the operative services, and to deliver the public services to the citizens in a more innovative and efficient way. And so far, we received more than 47 million applications by this year, and taking into account ASAN established in 2012, it's a quite big number. And the overall population of Azerbaijan is 10 million. And this number, the number of the applications means that the minimum, the one citizen of Azerbaijan throughout his life or her life applied to ASAN service 5 or 6 times. Besides the static buildings, we have the mobile buses, mobile services, well equipped with the fully equipped IT technologies, advanced IT equipments. They are visiting to the remote and rural areas of Azerbaijan and render the same services to the address, in the address of the citizens of Azerbaijan, where the Asan service centers has not been established yet. We have 10 buses, we have 1 Asan train, and throughout the country so far we have 21 Asan service centers, and we are planning to establish to open 6 more centers in upcoming years. Average daily applications per just the overall to the centers varies like from 30,000 to 35,000, and the level of satisfaction is more than 90%. So we have many feedback or just poll mechanisms to receive the feedbacks of the citizens, and from traditional phase like to the advanced phase, like websites, social media. We have Skype complaint corners. We have like a call center. We have 7 or 8 feedback ways. These are the the view of our mobile services. The inside of the bus, you see the train, and we have, in addition to that, we have also the VIP services, and the citizens or the clients who are not willing to come to or have not time to come to physically Asan service centers, they can call to our toll-free call center, and they can request the same center or ID card, passport, or even if he or she wants to sell the apartment to the address, and it's possible. And in order to ensure the social, solidarity, these services are free of charge for the disabled persons who have the difficulties to capable to come to the centers. But this the other citizens pay the additional fee for the VIP services. We have a huge group of the volunteers, and they are getting their working experience under the leadership of Asan. Most of them are the students of the universities in Azerbaijan, and so far we had more than 27,000 volunteers. And at the end of their 2 months training program or the volunteership program in Azerbaijan, in Asan Service Center, they are rewarded with a certificate or diploma, which helps them to find the jobs in their next career very easily. And now I'll go to the main part of my presentation. Digitalization and smart government is other direction of activity of the state agency. These slides show the development stage of digital government in Azerbaijan. As you see, between the 22 to 23 and 2013, this is the transition period from paper to electronic government in Azerbaijan. And from 2013 to 2019 is the one-stop shop reactive period of services. Asan is the reactive services because the citizen need to come to visit to Asan service centers in order to get the services. And now we are moving. We already moved to the proactive services. I'll talk about in detail in my later slide about our proactive services in the sample of the MyGov concept. And between the 2020 and 2025, this is the non-stop shop and period of new technologies, which were applying the machine learning, AI, and deep learning systems, and also we also would like to expand our service area and development of our national IT products. In 2018, with the participation of the President of Azerbaijan, eGov Development Center has been launched. And this is the view of our one-stop shop. This is on the center. The citizen need to come to the Asan centers, to the one-stop shop to get the services. And now we are moving to the non-stop shop services. Citizens don't need to visit to the Asan centers to get the most part of the services which are represented in Asan. And we here in MyGov portal, we are the proposal offering the G2B, G2C, and G2G services. And this is the electronic information exchange system. And by the way, I just forgot to talk about the uniqueness of Asan, because now I'm in the slides of the electronization. But I also should mention this issue that Here in Asan centers, we did not get the portfolio of the government entities. In Asan centers, 11 government entities deliver their services through the employees, through their own staff. Because here in Azerbaijan, in most of the countries, we are just saying that in one-stop shop models, they are giving this authority to one of the ministries, or the Minister of Justice or Minister of Interior, and it can cause to the conflict of interest or duplication of the services. But what the Azerbaijan government did, we create the totally free independent organization called the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations, and directed to the under the authority of the president, and which this agency is not acting as a service deliverer. My agency is acting only the monitoring and watchdogging the process and the services, and our agency provides or ensures the public services or the government organizations deliver the same services under the principle of the Asan principles. And Asan principles is the good governance principles: operativeness, efficiency, transparency, and innovations. These are the uniqueness and the difference of Asan from other one-stop shop centers. So the government organizations just seconded their employees, so they are getting the more money in addition to their salary. We are giving them to the bonuses in order to keep the motivation, and because we collect the state fees, and we 50% distributed to the government, to the budget, and the 50% distributed among the employees of the agency and the government organizations. And now I'm again transitioning to the MyGov. This is the MyGov, the proactive services. Each of the citizens, not each actually, to be frank, most of the citizens in Azerbaijan owns the personal cabinet called MyGov, and this cabinet owns all personal data of the citizens, but without his or her permission, any bank or any government agency are not allowed to get this, information without the permission of the citizen. We have single sign-on system, and citizen, once the government agency or banks or some other private organizations would like to get the data of the citizen, they need to get automatically the system shows the alert in the cabinet, and once the citizen give the authorization, then the government organizations or banks or private companies can access this data. So far, we have around 20 implemented projects, and you see in this the names. I'll talk about the Asan, the single sign-on system. Throughout the world, there are electronic signature, there are other type of speedy signature type, and we, as Asan, we just invented Asan login central authentication and authorization system. And through the system, you can, with the AI guided, you can also make a video registration, and you can make via the simplified sign-on system. And so far we have around 2 million registration in this system. And in addition to that, the other electronic product is of our agency of e-Gov Development Center is Asan Payment. Through this portal, you can pay all type of utility payments, all type of traffic penalties, migration penalties, by online or by terminals, and in a very speedy way. And the next product of e-Gov Development Center is Asan Visa, and our agency is also acting the main operator of the visa to the Azerbaijan. And if some of you visited Azerbaijan, or next time planning to visit Azerbaijan, you can use these services and you can leave your feedback. And 95 countries have the access to the system and can get the visa in 3 days, in 3 hours, or in terminals 30 seconds. we are believing that Azerbaijan is one of the countries and that deliver the visa in one of the speedy way in the world. Just through the Assam visa portal, you can get the visa in a standard way, 3 days, and in urgent for 3 hours, you can pay the additional fee. And once you come to Assam, Azerbaijan, in airport, you can just get also the visa of course, the eligible countries in just 30 seconds by paying the visa fee. And in the visa system, we are using
Kudarvayev, may I ask you to please wrap up? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And the last but not least, of course, I also would like to touch upon the machine learning system we are using in the Assam visa. And I will talk in a Q&A session in this issue. And I also would like to touch upon one important issue about our international achievements for the high recognition of the achievements of the public service delivery. We got we are the 2 times winner of the UN Public Service Award in 2015 and 2019, and the last one gave us by Undersecretary General of the United Nations, UN Special Award for promoting innovation, and our Assam service experience and our electronic service experience now replicating in some of the countries in Uzbekistan, in Afghanistan, in Morocco, in Uganda, in Montenegro, and Indonesia, so we are ready to share our experience with the respective countries. And thank you for so much, Mr. Moderator, and for ADB for creating me a chance to give Azerbaijan a model of the public service delivery system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kudaverdiev, for a most interesting presentation on the experiences of Azerbaijan with Asan and the platform to deliver services. Now it's my pleasure to move on to the next speaker. I'd like to begin by introducing Professor M.J. Moon, who is the Dean of the College of Social Sciences and Underwood Distinguished Professor in the Department of Public Administration at Yonsei University. He is also the Director for the Institute of Future Government. Professor Moon was selected as the world's 100 most influential people in digital government in 2018. His publication on the evolution of e-governance is the most widely cited paper on e-government in the social sciences. He has served on a number of government committees, including the Presidential Council for Future and Strategy, and has also worked on various training and projects for international organizations. Professor Moon is a PhD from the Maxwell School at Syracuse University and has taught at the University of Colorado at Denver, as well as Texas A&M University. Professor Moon, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, do you see my slide?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm Jay Moon, and when I was invited to this great event, and I looked at the title of the event, Foundation and Enabling Environment for Digital Government, and what kind of topic I choose for this particular session. And I chose this topic, Government Information Sharing System and a Foundation for Integrated E-Government Services in South Korea. So I will try to share the case in South Korea, but I think there are a lot of similarities with Azerbaijan case that we just heard. Well, the whole of government approach is very, very critical. And in fact, the essence of digital service, the success is really relying on whole of government approaches. So that I'll try to focus on that. And the key is government information sharing system. Well, so that we all know there are silos in government, and each agency, they own their own public information and administrative information. Unless we really connect them it's almost impossible to serve the public services in a higher level. So that the key is how you really move from silo to collaboration for integrated e-government services. And I think that's critical. And there are a lot of countries, they try to do that. As you see, this is United Nations e-government, a global e-government survey last year. And if you look at just Asia, and then there's wide distribution in terms of the rankings and the e-government performances. Unfortunately, the last ranking in Asia is North Korea, and the first one is South Korea. And I think the key is to what extent each government try to share public information, and actually they do that. There are a lot of beautiful roadmaps in different countries when I look at the e-government master plan, but actually not really many countries doing good in terms of government information sharing systems. So to me, government information sharing system is a backbone of integrated e-government services. And that's really key, a foundation for e-government services. And I'll try to look at the Korean cases. Of course, there are many different aspects we can take a look at in terms of what are the key pillars when you try to implement and introduce government information sharing systems. One, institutional dimensions. Do you have really good institutions which really push public information sharing system? And we did have in Korea a government information sharing committee, and they really tried to arrange and push information sharing, because many agencies, they don't want to share their information with other agencies, so that there is a very big need to have one agency which really coordinating the public information sharing system. The technical dimension, of course, unless you have digitizing government information, it's impossible to do that. So that digitization of government information and integrated standard information sharing system is critical. And then you do have administrative dimensions, of course, privacy protection, as we always important. So privacy protection is well handled. And also because different agencies, they don't want to share information with the other agencies, so that in Korea, we introduced annual performance evaluation system through which we actually evaluate to what extent actually each agency, they do share information which are requested by other agencies for public services. And then of course, we do have, we need to have a legal framework, and the Basic Framework Act for National Informatization of 1995. And then key comprehensive legal framework is E-Government Act of 2001, which is actually the foundation for entire Korean e-government. And in the E-Government Act of 2001, which is composed of 7 chapters, 1 chapter is critically assigned to government information sharing system. And out of 78 clauses, 9 clauses are actually about the information sharing. So it includes efficient management and utilization of government information, and then how, what kind of information actually co-utilized by different agencies, and then what's the process, who request and how they decide which information should be shared with other agencies. And then pre-agreement of information subjects, and then right to request for access by information subject, so that there are a very comprehensive legal framework for government information sharing system. And this is the sort of evolution of the system. So we introduced 2003 government information sharing system as part of 31 major e-government projects, which actually were the main e-government systems in Korea, and information sharing system is one of them. To me, it's really big foundation for other information e-government systems. And first one we did was, well, we actually looked at what are the administrative databases held by different agencies. So that, and then we decide which one should be shared with the other agencies. That's a very critical decision, because there are so many information could be shared, but which one is more impactful when you decide to share information with the other agencies? and you should look at public service demand from the citizen perspective, and also what are the information mostly requested by other agencies. So that decision is very strategic decisions. And then starting from the central government agencies, and then local government, and then public corporation and public institutions, we sort of expanded the scope of public information and government information. So this is the number of public information in a government information sharing system. So when we first introduced, and only 20 different kinds of information shared, and then now more than 160 information shared by among different agencies. Of course, these are the ones requested by different agencies for their own public services. So that you see that dramatic increase. And here, how many information actually shared through government information sharing systems, different agencies, and there are different information shared. And take a look at this one. The most one is Ministry of Land and Transportation, 34 different kinds of information shared with other agencies. And then here, Ministry of Ocean and Fishery, Ministry of Public Health and Welfare, Ministry of Interior and Safety. So, and then here, the second one here, that's public institutions, not only government agencies, but there are many public institutions. They also share information with other agencies and with other institutions. And by doing that, this one is because we introduced this one, we don't have to use the documents. This is the daily reduction of required documents to deliver public services. For example, almost 2 million documents, we don't have to use public documents for public services per day. And then per year, almost 700 million documents we do not need to use because of the online information sharing systems. So what are the lessons and takeaways? Well, first, we need a specific legal framework to push and promote government information sharing systems. And then we do need actually, technology to do that. And that's the something that we need to prepare. And also that we need a special collaborative committee to handle that, because there are a lot of disputes, because someone they want to, the other one they don't want to provide, and there is a specific committee we need to resolve. It requires a lot of reforms. Of course, reform is not easy to handle, but information sharing is the right direction for digital government, and I think that that's why I say that's a foundation. Silo removal, it's easy to say, but I have been involved in that committee, and sometimes it's really fierceful battling among different agencies. Legal framework, political will is very, very specifically important, and strategic plan, incentive and regulations to share information. We should have incentive structure and then regulation structure as well. But most of all, in fact, it's a sort of a, out there, but it's very difficult to have administrative culture reforms. It takes long, but that's the critical to achieve. Administrative culture, we should have good understanding, we should have good communication, but we should work together. And I think that's the critical. And take a look at this one, two gentlemen, US former presidents, and just to pick one for me, either one, and stare at him for 5 seconds for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who is this guy? He's not Obama, he's not Bush. When you talk to other agencies and share information, they don't want to share. And here, we need to accept the other one and understand why we need that from the perspective of citizens. And then we can compromise. It takes long, it's very difficult to that in reality. moving forward, I just want to borrow words from Einstein. He said, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, we should keep moving forward. And then we can improve digital government and online government services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Moon, for that presentation on Korea's foray with government information sharing systems. We certainly take note of some of the lessons in terms of breaking those silos and bringing in a cultural transformation initiative, some things that we're looking at also internally within ADB. I would like now to turn to our next speaker. And for that, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Florian Marcus, who is the Digital Transformation Advisor in E-Estonia. Mr. Marcus holds 2 master's degrees in the field of political studies and also serves as a member of the UNDP's roster of experts on e-government. Mr. Marcus, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, the invitation, of course. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to some people who have fallen asleep in the previous talks. No, you chose the exact right session because I think, you know, the stuff that we're talking about, they are the foundations of digital government. And so we need to get these things right. And then afterwards, we can talk about all the fun stuff. So actually, I want to follow up on the talk by Professor M.J. Moon. It goes very much in the same direction, but probably just with the example of how it's been working out in Estonia. So the question is, what do you need to build up a digital government, or as we prefer to call it, a digital society? Because there must be the understanding that it's not just about public services. It's not just about getting a passport or selling a house. It's also about, you know, you may have in your wallet right now around 10 loyalty cards from 10 different supermarkets and different bookstores and cafes and so on. So it's about digitalizing society as a whole, because ideally, people don't use public services very often. You know, the preference is not to have them at all, of course. So the private sector plays an important role. And I want to start sharing my screen in a second, but first we need to talk about one foundation that is really, really important. In Estonia, we have, okay, thanks to the background, hi. So this is my electronic identity in Estonia. It is compulsory, not just for citizens, but also for residents, for immigrants like myself. I'm German. So everybody who lives here for more than 3 months must get this electronic identity, because Estonia did not want to create a sort of two-tier society where some people are in the digital system and some people are not. We see many countries around the world, including my home country, Germany, where you can decide on which side you want to be. And obviously that creates more tensions and frictions than the other way around. So with the electronic ID out of the way, there are a couple more steps that we need to take care of. And the first one is the legal side. We just heard a lot of talk, and very important talk, about the issue of silos in countries around the world, and that they don't want to share information, but they all want to collect the information so that it's right next to them. And in Estonia, what we've set up in the year 2000 is the Public Information Act. And it says, I mean, it's not the longest law in the world, but there are a couple of things that it says. The most important thing is very simple. Government authorities are not allowed to create new databases that duplicate some of the data sets of databases that already exist. Meaning, if the, as an example, if my address is stored with the Estonian population register, and the Electoral Commission would like to determine my address in order to find out in which district I'm allowed to cast my vote, they are not allowed to ask me, because there's already one database that holds the address. It's the population register. So in this case, the Electoral Commission has to request the data digitally from the population register and not from me. This makes, first of all, citizens' lives a lot easier, because you know, we no longer have to change our address and all of these different things with all of the different government agencies. It makes data management a lot easier for the government infrastructure overall. In the EU, we have the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, that effectively says, everybody has to figure out where their data is, who has access to it, on what legal foundation do they have access to it. And so the Public Information Act has, since the year 2000, really laid the foundation for making that implementation very easy in Estonia. And last but not least, because of this act, it means that in practice, the data sets about citizens are extremely decentralized, right? The population register holds my address, but they don't hold my name. That's with the police and border guard. So even if you were able to find a way to hack into the population register, you find people's addresses, you don't find their names. And so this decentralization helps us with cybersecurity. The question is, how did we implement this decentralization on a technological level? And this is where the X-Road comes in. So the X-Road does the endpoint-to-endpoint encryption and automation of data exchange across the entire government architecture, but also private sector entities that want to join the system. And we actually have, so Estonia invented this stuff in the early 2000s and implemented it. But we also have the source code open source. It's on GitHub if you want to check it, if we have any programmers here. And we have several Asian countries that have looked into this. For example, Cambodia is implementing the X-Road bit by bit. And there are pilot projects in Japan and other countries as well. So the X-Road you can see here, today, it connects around 3,000 services to each other, bearing in mind that Estonia has a population of only 1.3 million people. Last month, these numbers are from September. Last month, there were 253 million queries made through the system. So that's the sort of, just to give you a sense of the scale of how it works. But that number is not so important. The number that is a lot more important is that out of those 253 million queries, only 3% were initiated by humans. So 97% were automated machine to machine. And this is where Estonia saves the bulk of the money, the bulk of the time, and of course also the stress, both for the citizens and the people that work in the public sector. The third step is the services themselves. So this here is estonia.ee, asti.ee, and you may have heard that in Estonia, 99% of government services are accessible online. The two services that are not are number one, getting married, and number two, getting divorced. So anything else you can do digitally today. And we've tried to make the services themselves really, really user-friendly. Many of them are either already proactive, which was talked about in the Azerbaijan presentation, but at least, they are in the piloting stage. One thing that has been online for 2 years, for example, when a child is born, that the parents automatically get a notification, hey, congratulations on the birth of your child, to which bank account do we send the child benefit payment money? So this is the sort of stuff that helps not just in terms of user friendliness, but it's also about social inclusion, because especially with the smaller support schemes, more regional or for minorities, people may not be aware that they are entitled to certain services. And in this case, we are working on an environment where the government lets you know, you are now entitled to this. Do you want it? And so we think that this is going to help as well. Now, if you have reached this level of digital maturity, let's call it, you also have more time and space to think about other fun stuff. The first thing that we did was to create what we call E-Residency. There's a very, very simple idea behind this. Even in the best case scenario, only 1.3 million people use our digital services because that's just the population of Estonia. Why don't we make an electronic identity that does not give you citizenship, it does not give you any visa rights or anything like that, but it does give you access to the digital service portfolio in Estonia. And so people from around the world who have never even, who don't even know where Estonia is on a map, they can apply for this digital identity. and they can get access to the digital service portfolio. By now, around 85,000 people have done that. And we can also see when we scroll down the map that there is quite a bit of representation in Asia as well. So whether it's China or South Korea or Japan or India. So there are plenty of people that see different kinds of use cases. You can create a company online in Estonia, it takes around 20 minutes. And all of a sudden you have a company inside the European single market. So if you want to do business here, then that is a perfectly fine way to do it. And last but not least, once you have brought online the digital services that used to be on paper and you're sort of starting to run out of ideas, you also can use this platform to create new services that wouldn't have been possible online. One simple example is this. This is the website of the State Forestry Agency. And what you can do is you can find a suitable location, so a state forest. You can go to that state forest, select a Christmas tree, cut it down, pay online, and then take your Christmas tree to your living room to celebrate Christmas. So this is one of these things that you simply wouldn't be able to do, or it would be very bureaucratic and very unfriendly in terms of for the user. And so in Estonia, you can do that online. And you get a nice Christmas tree, and the State Forestry Agency, they know where to focus their reforestation efforts and so on. So this would be just a quick insight into how stuff works in Estonia and why. I'm looking forward to questions later on. And if you have any questions, if you wake up bathed in sweat 2 weeks later around the X Road or stuff like that, you can also add me on LinkedIn or find my email address under e-estonia.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Florian. Very interesting presentation, looking at such things as exchange and information sharing across services, legal protection considerations, the X-Road platform, and technology. I ask myself whether there are less separations and less divorces, given that you don't have that access. We'll ask more about that in the question and answer period, I'm sure. Okay, so turning to our fourth speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Barbara Ubaldi. She is the head of the Digital Government and Data Unit at the OECD. Barbara leads the work on digital technologies and data to enhance openness, efficiency, and innovation in governments. She has served for 8 years as the program officer within the United Nations United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, and she's gathered experience working on digital government, ICT, and knowledge management for development. She is a Fulbright scholar and holds a Master of Science degree in public administration from Northeastern University in Boston. Apolitical listed Barbara among the 2018 and 2019 top 20 most influential figures on digital government worldwide. Barbara, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. I hope that you see the presentation correctly.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. It's a real pleasure to be part of this conversation today. And I was listening with a lot of interest to the presentations from the 3 countries to which are members of the OECD. And we follow very closely the work that Estonia and Korea have been doing in these areas, which has been really enlightening for many of the other countries around the world, but also within the OECD family. The presentation today has the purpose for me to share with you a little bit what has been our thinking and our work in the past few years on digital government, trying a little bit to contextualize this conversation in the world that we're living in today, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19. More and more we see that we don't mention the pandemic and the emergency that many governments have found themselves to deal with, but we do know that it's still a reality for many governments to actually try to understand how to make the most of digital tools and data to respond to the demands that have been changing in a matter of a few hours and overnight. And this has had an impact also in the narrative that I think we all ourselves started using when it comes to the digital transformation of the public sector. Until March 2020, even within the OECD, inspired by an horizontal project that we have in the organization, we were talking about governments and societies and economies going digital. I think that the pandemic made us see that the government, societies, and economies had to be digital. So there was no time to waste and no time in our hands to say, okay, how can we prepare for this? I do not like to use the word acceleration, just because I think it gives the wrong message, making us think that the fact that governments in the past 16 months had to take concrete steps made it possible for them to really transform how they work digitally. Whereas I think the real point is to try to do things right and to establish the foundations, the correct foundations for making sure that the use of digital tools and data help governments transform how they function, but with the sight of providing better results to the users of public services. And I think the previous three presentations gave very concrete examples on how the three countries have actually focused on making sure that the value of investments on digital government come to the life of the final users of the services. In this sense, I think the big focus that we're seeing at the OECD is really to try to understand how all the investments on digital can actually help provide results that are more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable across time. So for us, it has been important in the past few years to frame the conversation around the idea that there needs to be a shift from what we consider to be an e-government approach to a digital government approach. Now, leaving the language aside and focusing on what we mean concretely by this, the point is that for many years we saw governments trying to transfer online processes, procedures, and ways of providing services which had been conceived in the analog age. This has resulted in many cases in a transferring of the bureaucratic hurdles and obstacles and inefficiencies from offline to online world. Now, the digital government approach is an approach that really tries to focus on the value that the use of digital technologies and data can bring to change how things are managed inside of the public administration, how the different parts of the administration work together, they integrate. The great example that from Florian was demonstrating how, and also from actually Professor Moon was showing how the idea of going beyond silos is a necessity, is a must if we want to deliver better value, better results. So the point is that the digital government approach really has the big difference of trying to see how can the value of these tools be maximized to change how core government functions work, how processes work, and how the interaction with the outside ecosystem happens. So the idea is really not to replicate what exists already, but to try to make it more, let's say, not only more efficient, but also more user-friendly and closer to the needs of the societies. So this shift going from e-gov, digital gov is not an easy task. It's very, not very, but it's easy to talk about it. It's much more difficult to make it happen in reality. And that's why at the OECD, we are working through a number of ways to support the governments with which we work, both in OECD member countries and beyond, to try to make this change happen in a meaningful way. So not just accelerating actions. There are a number of legal instruments, which at the OECD are the most, let's say, powerful way to support a government that we have been developing in the past few years that have been adopted by the Council of the OECD. The first one is the recommendation on digital government strategies. I'll talk about it in a few minutes more in detail. The second is one recently adopted on enhanced access and sharing of data, which focuses very much on the efforts that governments, the scientific community and the private sector have to make to open up data, which are relevant for public interest. We support efforts with our policy work. So we have a number of frameworks that have been supporting the analysis we do of government practices and policies and initiatives in a way that is consistent across countries. So not only we can understand what's going on in a country, but countries can also compare with each other from a policy point of view. The measurement work that has been a big priority for us, that includes the Open Data Index and the Digital Government Index, is a way for us to say, it's not about ranking, but it's about through the policy work, understanding where the gaps still exist, how can these gaps be tackled, and how can progresses in tackling these gaps be monitored. Capacity building complements the work on policy analysis and measurement that we do. More and more, our countries ask not only to be helped in understanding what can be done in a different way, but also to be helped in doing it in a different way. And the sharing of knowledge and experiences across countries, for us, it's a must and it's a priority, because it's not about what the Secretariat can do, but is what about the Secretariat playing a role to make sure that when there are good practices and good lessons, and also not really good lessons to be learned, how can the Secretariat help make the connection between those who are actually making things happen? And that's why I'm really happy to be in this conversation today, because the region is a region where we started working, but getting the ties closer, also in terms of knowledge sharing between our member countries in the region and non-member countries, and trying to help those who are less advanced when it comes to digital government maturity. It's a priority for the organization. So the recommendation that was adopted in 2014 on digital government provides the basis and the foundation for our work. It's organized around three main big pillars. I'm not gonna read all the provisions in detail, but the key message is really that the use of digital to foster openness and innovation and engagement. The idea of rethinking the governance for digital government to support the type of horizontality, integration, joined up administration that digital government demands, and securing the capacities intended not only in terms of skills, but also in terms of funding, in terms of processes for getting the expenditures right. So it's about public procurement, but it's also about the capacity to formulate value propositions. So the famous business case methodology, which was highly embraced by Denmark many years ago, and now it has become a reality across many countries. Those are all key elements that, in our view, are helping building more competent government. So competence is not only about having skills and talent, which, however, it's a key must. The recommendation has been applied in a very high number of country reviews, which has helped us to identify what are, in our view, the key 6 dimensions of a digital government, which is being digital by design. So we don't talk about digital by default, because we're not meaning to say that we need to bring all users online, but yes, inside of the administration, things need to be done digitally. Great examples given by the previous speakers on this. Second, it needs to be data-driven. Third, it needs to be able to operate as if it was a platform, meaning provision of guidelines, standards, common ways of doing things is a way to connect the different parts of the administration. It needs to be open by default, whereby we don't only refer to open data, but we really refer to using digital and data to open up service design and delivery processes and the design of policies as well. And the two transformational effects of these first 4 dimensions is that a government can therefore, and should therefore, as digital government, be more user-driven and proactive. Great example from Florian on the service delivered to a new parent in real time. So the idea is that we've been developing a number of frameworks that are somehow standing out of these, the broad digital government framework that have precisely the goal to support concrete action. So it's about designing the governance. So we've been working together with member countries to understand what does it mean having the right governance for digital government. There are, yes, common elements and features that cuts across all countries that have become more mature on being digital that needs to be in place, even if the specific model for example, for institutional or organizational governance can change from country to country. Second, we have a framework that supports a more data-driven approach across administrations, bearing in mind that it's not only about applying the data, but it's about having the data governance in place and remembering that the use of data needs to be done with trust to ensure that the transparency and the ethical use of data is guaranteed to increase the confidence of the public on the capacity of governments to use data correctly. We have a framework that supports the development of digital talent and skills across the administration and across different, let's say, groups of civil servants, including the leadership. And last but not least, we work a lot on service design and delivery. So the idea is really to help governments connect the idea that if you want to deliver better services, you need to start with designing the services in the correct way. So what kind of skills you need to have in place? How can you better use data to understand the needs of the users? And how can you engage with the users, having the right governance in place? So the reason why I put all these frameworks in the one slide is because for us, they complement each other. They help to go a bit more in depth to address specific challenges, but they need to be seen as connected elements or different pieces of the same puzzle. So as I said, we strongly believe on measuring because measuring, it's important to monitor progresses. Measuring is also a way to tell a story of what goes right and what perhaps has not gone right. And measuring is what helps understanding where corrective measures need to be taken. So the two indexes that we've been releasing, the one on open data for now many editions, the one on digital government for the first time in 2019, and they both will come out in the new edition in next year. They both are, again, even these two complementary, because the digital government index has one indicator on data-driven public sector and has the indicator on open by default. And clearly the index on open data that we call our data index, which stands for open, useful and reusable data index, complements the digital government index. So again, for us, there's no government that can be really digital that doesn't include the data and the open data as part of the data agenda at its core. So really the indexes both are meant to the different indicators that compose them to better connect also questions around data, around public service design and delivery, around the ethical concerns in the digital age, around managing financial resources in a way that it's strategic. So not separating procurement from budgeting, from monitoring how money is being spent, and the capacity of utilizing tools like, as I said previously, having the right capacity to formulate a value proposition, to manage a project with agility, but also to use tools like digital identity, for example, as an enabler of better access to public services and also a more trustworthy use of data, for example, personal data. So the two indexes, the digital government index and the open data index, demonstrate that there's still some work that needs to be done across countries in the different aspects. In the case of open data, we look at data accessibility, availability, and reuse, and we see that governments still have to increase their efforts in fostering the reuse of the data for creating value. And when it comes to digital government index, we see the governments, especially in relation to the two transformational dimensions, being more proactive, being more user-driven, still have some journey to travel, to be fully digital. So our idea is really that all this wealth of knowledge that is produced by working primarily with our member countries, but not only, needs to be the basis of the work we do with non-member countries, really, to remember that the key point here is really transferring knowledge, and many non-member countries have very great experiences to put on the table, like we heard today. So it's not about segmenting parts of the world, but it's really focusing on the transferring of experiences, which is a bit the focus of our Globally Leader initiative, which is a way to say, how can we best use the tools, methodologies, and knowledge and expertise and people from the OECD family, whereby people are also delegates from our member countries, to use non-member countries. And this has been a bit the focus also of the work that we've been doing with the region, more actively since 2019. So we're really happy to be part of this conversation today. We look forward to talking to you. And there's a conference coming up, the ASEAN conference, in a few weeks. So we really hope everybody can actually join the conference, which is a way also to better understand what is happening in the region. So this is a publication that was gathering results on the work we did on measurement in Southeast Asia in 2019, and possibly new version coming up in the next biennium will be a way to keep also seeing progresses in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for a most interesting presentation. The pandemic and how that has in some ways been the great transformation that's leading to perhaps more and more digital services. We've looked at you've looked at the 6 dimensions of digital government, a very good framework. And you've brought the point that if you can't measure it, you can't manage, excuse me, with indices that you've presented that are very relevant to this work. Thank you also for sharing that last publication, which I was very pleased to be part of. On that note, I think we can now open it up to questions from the floor. We have time. May I ask participants then to either raise your hand or to come in through the chat box. May we ask you to please introduce yourself and to turn on your cameras when asking the questions. And please indicate to whom the question is addressed to. Thank you very much. Okay. If we have no questions, I have some questions that we can start off with. Okay, so maybe let me start maybe with Mr. Kudaverdiev. You had explained to us how the ASAN platform has become a successful model for a one-stop shop agency in Azerbaijan. And it's now reaching out to neighboring countries, as you indicated, to build up greater partnerships. My question to you is, we've heard a lot from all the presenters a little bit on the lessons, and that's always very important. What if you could just drill deeper a little bit on what were some of the challenges, say, that government of Azerbaijan faced in institutionalizing and integrating one-stop shop services. We've heard from many of the presenters that there's a lot of silos in this business, that we need to be able to share information, break those silos, and move towards a greater integration. Any additional thoughts or considerations from you, Mr. Kudaverdiev? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrasco. A very good question. First of all, I would like to highlight that our state agency for public service and social innovations under the President of Azerbaijan, established by the presidential decree in 2012 in June. During the establishment period, and because as I mentioned, the ASAN service is one of the projects of our agency, and ASAN is the one-stop shop where the 11 government agencies render the services. The first difficulty that we challenged during this period about the integration of the government agencies under the umbrella of ASAN is how to say, they were thinking that they are losing. They were thinking that they are losing their weight, or we are getting the services from the authority of them, and somehow they would like to put some artificial barriers ahead of us. Yeah, to be frank, yeah. But what we did, as I mentioned, because in other countries the one-stop shops gave to the one ministry, and it creates a lot of challenges rather than us. So in order to diminish, to minimize the problems, we created the total independent agency. But even at this time, we also faced up these challenges. But what we did, first of all, we met with the head of these ministries, the ministers, and explained to them, and then involved the seconded employees of the ministries to the trainings, and to explain them they are not losing their their services. They are seconded under the umbrella of ASAN. And the important thing is the mindset. If you would like to achieve the transparent, effective, and the innovative public service delivery system, you need to change all the criteria, how to say, the mindset of the how to say, the service deliverers. And at this point, the training played an essential role. And each assigned employee or the government employee who is working under the umbrella of Assan, they have their training dossier. And now, because and they were working under the different atmosphere, and now they moved to the other atmosphere, and we involve them mostly use. The second issue, how to tackle this challenge, the use. First is training. Second is the involving of the use. Third is somehow the financial motivation. Yeah, we just create a unique, how to say, bonus system and evaluation system. We have a unique evaluation system. Each employee evaluated based on their how to say, based on their services, based on their service deliverers, and at the end of the month, if they're servicing good, if they are fulfilling all the obligations deriving from the Assam principles in a very good way, they are getting more bonuses. Otherwise, the bonuses of the employees are deducting from their monthly bonuses system. They have salary, and they have 2 times, how to say, for example, they are getting the $500 the salary, and they are getting $1,000 the bonuses, two times more rather than the salary. And these are the other how to say measure, financial incentives. Also, these are the fourth measure that we tackle these challenges.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Very useful. I wanted to just mention that the current Zoom platform does not allow us to get participants to put up their videos as they ask their questions. So unfortunately, we are limited to putting questions through the chat box. So for any of you who, again, are keen to ask any questions, please type it into the chat box. All right. I still don't see any additional questions, so let me then continue with my own questions. So this one is to Professor Moon. So Professor Moon, I'm sure you've had this question many times. In our work across Asia Pacific, we have partnerships, and a lot of the knowledge partnerships are with countries like Korea. We have seen that the country is famous for its excellency in the use of digital technologies for daily lives, businesses, public services, and as you showed, the country Korea is in the top position in the e-government development index for many years now. When we take people to Korea, when we try to take some of the learnings from Korea, the first thing that happens is they put their hands up and say, yes, but we don't have that investment in the human capital as we've seen in Korea. They're too far advanced. What do you say to that? What are some of the important steps that you feel that other countries in the region could take on board from the Korean experience? Thank you.
Well, I don't think there is one particular solution fits all to many other countries. I think there's contextual variables are quite different, so that one solution work in one particular country might not be transferable to other countries. But in terms of the government's will to support digital government is critical. And you point out, the human capital skill sets. Well, when I review the history of Korean e-government development, and I think the first stage, the planning and the implementation gap was really minimized. Well, you see that there are beautiful master plan, but actual implementation does not work, and that happens a lot. And how could that happen in Korea, minimizing planning and implementation gap? When I had a talk with the chairperson who led a special e-government committee, which is actually the coordinating committee under President's direction in 2000, early 2000s. And he had 55 breakfast meetings. And he said, sort of 55 breakfast meetings, that's the real foundation for working on e-government. Well, so every week he had a breakfast meeting. And then, as I mentioned, there are a number of major e-government projects, and which involves different agencies and different people, so that he constantly reviewing the progress of e-government projects and then reporting that to the Blue House, presidential office, so that that is really a working mechanism through which actually you're planning and then try to implement and make a progress. And the other one is always that there is digital literacy out there, and also resistance from different agencies. So it's important, don't be resistant, that does not work at all. So they're actually providing technical support to government officials and then citizens, very, very critical. For example, when we introduced G2G systems, we call Onnara system, and different agencies, they didn't want to use that one. And then what was done was actually they created help desk. So whenever they have any difficulties in using the system, and then they can call, and then people will be dispatched and then give technical support. And then every year evaluation, so that annual evaluation, to what extent each agency actually used the system. That performance was documented and reported to the president, so that ministers were interested in doing good because they will be evaluated. So there is, small bolts and notes should be designed in details rather than big picture and beautiful diagrams. So I think that's very, very critical. And then citizen side, of course, there is a digital gap. So government actually provided different training programs for those who don't have good digital literacy. So that, for example, my father, he could attend different meetings and then actually learn surfing internet and then Photoshops even. So that there are a lot of very detailed training programs for disadvantaged populations in different places.
Very, very good point, Professor Moon. And we also need to bring in some ways the demographics here. Those countries that have an aging population may be a little slower on the uptake than those who have younger generations coming in and are very versatile. But very nice points that you featured. We did finally get a question from the floor, and I am pleased to read it out. And this one is to you, Florian. I would be keen to hear a bit more from Florian about the adoption of X-Road by the government of Cambodia. How is this pilot project being implemented? Is there technical assistance provided by Estonia or anyone else? Who is delivering the project on site? And wondering whether this is absorbing considerable human resources from Estonia or whether this requires a fairly light touch support. Florian, over to you, please.
That's a very, very good question to which I think the Cambodians have a more informed answer than I do. So there has certainly been some informational exchange. I'm not sure whether there's even an official memorandum of understanding between the two countries, but rather that it's so the X-Road was developed at the start by Estonian private sector companies that then handed it over to the Estonian government. And my understanding is that it's the same in Cambodia, so that they have found a couple of the companies that made it for Estonia, and that they also helped them implement it in Cambodia. So I guess it is absorbing some human resources, but also Estonians. If you've ever met an Estonian in your life, you will know that they're not the most sociable and most talkative people in the world. So they are more than happy to train people at the start so that they don't have to deal with you for the rest of their lives. But no, it's really important to ensure capacity building on the ground. Digitalization should not be an exercise where you remain dependent on any other country's expertise for the decades to come. So So it is primarily handled certainly by the government of Cambodia. Who exactly in there? I have some contacts. Maybe I can, if the person who asked the question, if they could get in touch with me on LinkedIn, I can create that connection to help them find out more.
Thank you very much, Florian, for that. Thanks for that offer as well. I'm just looking. All right, no further questions for the time being from the floor. So let me then go ahead and ask a question to Barbara. So Barbara, ADB has collaborated with OECD in many areas, including in tax governance, as you mentioned, and other areas. Now, one thing that I'd like to share with you, when we look at the portfolio of ADB projects, where do we see greater interaction on digital solutions? And that is largely still in public sector management domain, and I think in transport also it's coming in strongly. If from the perspective of a leader in this field, how would you suggest that we go about working with our developing member countries and reaching out to help promote more digital government services in these countries? Any thoughts from you on this? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bruno. I think that the starting point is to understand that having a holistic approach, I think, should be a priority. And when I say a holistic approach, I mean that in many cases we see across governments worldwide the tendency to focus on one of the key themes, forgetting the other. So it's thinking about the type of governance and how many times they come to us and ask, should we establish an agency or not? And again, the point is not having an agency, is having the governance that helps you advance. But then they talk about data as a separate item. So having more data-driven approaches in governments seems to be disconnected for many of them from thinking about the governance they need to have in place. Then it comes the topic of services. But then, we're working on improving service delivery, disconnected from the governance and from the use of data. And fourth, the skills. In many cases, the conversation around the type of skills, profiles, talent, leaders, is disconnected from the other three that I mentioned. So I really think that besides, what I already said a few times that I think came through as a clear message, which is about the relevance of monitoring and measuring what you do, even nationally, not only through international measurement exercises, but having a holistic approach that connects the dots, I think it's the way to go. And that supports progress, and progress can have different speeds in different countries, and results can look differently in different countries. But I really think that the idea of connecting the dots with this holistic approach should be the key way forward, because otherwise, we will still remain with the problem of bureaucracy in terms of public sector management remaining a big hindrance, that it is still a main obstacle for advancing the digital transformation in many, many countries.
Very good. Thank you very much, Barbara, for those points. And let us see if we've got any further questions from the floor. I still don't see any. I think you've done such a wonderful job that seems all the points are very clear. Let's just wait a minute or two. Maybe if there are no points here, I can just, I would like to maybe get everyone's thoughts, and we can take it one by one, and just maybe give us a 2-minute summary of what would you like to say if we had our DMCs here on this call. What are the 2 or 3 key points that you would suggest that they need to work on to get it right, and to in some ways take on board some of the good lessons that you have presented from your own experiences. So if you can kind of synthesize to those 2 or 3 points, and then we can pretty much bring this session to a close. So I don't know, maybe we can go backwards, if you like, from the previous order. So maybe Barbara, if I may ask if you have some thoughts as to what you'd like to leave with our audience. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. So the first, I think let's remember it's about the final users of what we deliver, what governments deliver. That has been touched upon all of us. So I really think remembering that the user should be with the needs, which can be different across societies, need to be at the core. Second, I think that data still remains a very untapped resource in public administration. So I think remembering that data should be seen as key resource like people and money should be a priority. And third, I think there are a growing number of concerns around, for instance, ethical issues that needs to be at the core of the reflection on using digital, which is not about the technology. We should not be about the technology. So I really think that, for example, as governments progress in the use of artificial intelligence, understanding not only if it makes sense or not, but also remembering that there are important ethical issues around the use of data and technology, including emerging tech like AI, should be a priority. So I think these are elements that need to be present as points of reflection across all different initiatives, strategies, policies, and projects when it comes to digital government.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very persuasive points, Barbara. Maybe I can ask now Florian for his 2 or 3 main points. Thank you.
Very, very briefly. Number one, pragmatism. So we have many countries around the world that try to over-engineer all of their solutions and make sure that they are 110% inclusive. Estonians have been a bit more, you know what, let's make a solution that's 95% perfect, and we will update the remaining 5% over the coming years. So just get your technology on the road and improve it afterwards. Of course, cybersecurity, you have to manage that continuously, but just in terms of service delivery, that's important. The second thing that Estonia is currently stumbling upon time and time again is cross-border interoperability. Super basic example, when I turned 18 in Germany, I filled out a paper document with my organ donorship passport. I filled out the same document digitally in Estonia when I moved here 6 years ago. The question is, if I die, what happens to my organs? Does the Estonian system know that the German signature was made? Absolutely not. One is on paper, one is online. The second question is, even if both were digital and could talk to each other, what would have legal precedence? And the quick answer is that right now, there is no answer. There are legal challenges that most countries have not even thought about yet. And it is really time to think about that stuff, because we are all busy building our own silo solutions, not inside the country anymore, but now country by country. This is no better. It will be just as complicated in the future.
Thank you very much, Florian. Let's turn it now to Professor Moon. A couple of points.
Well, I just want to mention probably 3-4 points. One is digital government. Is it really digital technology issues or government issues? I think it's still government issues. Digital technology, we should take advantage of them, and there are many different ways we can do that. But in many cases, and government issues are really key, so that we need the reforms in government first and tied with the government technology and digital technologies. So that's one thing that I want to share. And the second point is priority issues in terms of what kind of data, what kind of information should be shared and open, and then what kind of services we should put first. And to do that, I think citizen demand and citizen needs and citizen perspective should be part of that. So priority issues. And third, coordination. We talked about silos, and coordination it's easy to say, but in reality, based on my own experiences in different committees, and it's extremely difficult because of the agency interest. And I think it's more important because we are moving from a one-stop service to a non-stop service, as mentioned. So the non-stop service, coordination is so critical, and I think it's more so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Moon. And finally, to our last speaker, Mr. Mohammed Ali, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Carrasco. I totally agree with the saying of the Professor Moon. First is that this is the government issue, and the second is the coordination is the makes utmost importance. Without the right coordination, you can fail, like even in an early stage, at the early stage. Even in the one-stop shop services and in non-stop shop, also it makes a very, very important the coordination. And in addition to that, the political support from the government, direct support of the government, either it's the unitary republic or parliamentary republic or the monarchy, the political support makes enormous importance. The other issue is the distinguished speakers also touched upon this issue, is the digital literacy. And special awareness raising campaigns should be conducted among the population. Without this issue, even the government can electronize many things, but without the users, it can make a nonsense for the government and for the whole of the world. And the other thing is the sharing experiences. We need to such type of the international platforms to share the best experiences, like digital ADB, this type of platforms. How that if we have such more such type of platforms, or like international institutions who is in charge of this internet, the sharing, the organizing this type of events, or how to say and making analysis or research, this is very important. And also lessons learned makes very important, because the new governments or the countries who are willing to replicate some of the advanced system, they need to learn, first of all, the other countries and their lesson learned, in order to not to make the same wrongs in the drafting or in the preparation or forming up their digitalization process. And lastly, to change the mindset in the service culture just from the scratch. This is very important to my mind as well. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much. All great points. I'd like to now bring this session to a close. I wanted to thank all four panelists for excellent sharing of lessons, experiences. We deeply appreciate your time and effort. We've learned a lot from this discussion. We hope the participants have also enjoyed this. Thank you all, and let me now turn it over to Uni. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno, and a big thanks to our panelists for sharing your insights today. Before we let you go, participants, please take a minute to take a poll to tell us what you thought of today's session. You'll also receive an email from us so that you can share more in-depth feedback. And we thank you in advance for your time, for sharing your thoughts. And this will all help us improve our future creation of knowledge. And tomorrow we also have multiple sessions. We're getting close to the end of Digital X ADB, and tomorrow's sessions are all about startups and innovations. We first have a talk show on innovation ecosystems, followed by a panel discussion, which will be moderated by our VP of Private Sector Operations and PPP. And that session will be on the role of development finance in fostering startup ecosystem. And in the afternoon, there'll be clinics for ADB staff so that we can promote more one ADB approach in promoting innovations. And last but not the least, there will also be a hackathon on women-owned businesses in the afternoon as well. And please don't forget to visit the Tech Expo and the live sessions on Friday, where ADB's tech partners provide live demonstrations of cutting-edge solutions that could disrupt our investment and development projects as well. So with that, once again, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to welcoming you back at Digital X ADB.